Did Seth Rollins just turn heel? Did Bray Wyatt just turn face? And what the hell happened to the Firefly Funhouse? Welcome everyone to your Enhancement Talent Review for WWE Raw October 14th, 2019. The strangest ending in a minute. I can definitely say that. So we'll start with the end, which is literally the last 3 minutes of this show, and work our way from the beginning from there. So, as I said, this came after the god-awfully long tag team match. There was 3 minutes left, but we were promised that Seth Rollins was going to go fiend hunting, as he said in an earlier interview. And so, fiend hunting Seth Rollins went, and that brought him into the Firefly Funhouse. The first time any living being outside of Bray Wyatt has entered the Firefly Funhouse. And so Bray is hosting his Firefly Funhouse, and in comes Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins, he beats up Bray Wyatt. He continuously gives him punches to the face, and still somewhat in the comical cartoon way. But it gets different when Bray gets up from this beating and says, "Seth, why are you doing this to me? Please stop." But Seth punches Bray again, says, "Burn it down." And he lights a table on fire in the funhouse, then flips it over into the wall with all of Bray's pictures. And that's it. We see the funhouse burning to a crisp. The fire funhouse, the fire safety funhouse, maybe. So, the question now is, was this actually a heel turn? And, the obvious answer would be yes. And the real obvious answer would be this is in fact a double. Did essentially this same exact thing, leading into Bray and Randy's WWE title match at WrestleMania 33, I want to say. One of the worst WrestleMania matches with no faults to Orton or Bray. But that's a whole nother issue. We saw Randy Orton throw a match in the home that Sister Abigail's spirit rested, lit it on fire, and then did his signature pose as this shack was burning in flames. But then he was still the babyface. So with Seth Rollins here, is it entirely impossible that he would do this and then WWE somehow still think that he is the babyface? I talked about it not long ago that Roman Reigns once tried to kill a man and was still a babyface. So, the logical answer would be that this is a double turn. Bray is turning face, Seth is turning heel. But it is WWE, so we really don't know. But I envision that that's where this is going to go. It's going to help lead the fans into being more invested in Bray. And also, this could be the closure for the Firefly Funhouse. It could be that we never see this Bray Wyatt again, the Mr. Rogers cardigan Bray Wyatt, and that from now on, it is just the Fiend. And with that, it's difficult to really see it as a babyface with it just being the Fiend, but maybe you could do both characters just without the Funhouse aspect of it. I'm not entirely sure how they can do it, but I don't know. We definitely have bad faith right now in WWE because of the sour taste that was left with the Hell in a Cell finish between these two. So there's definitely a lot of bad faith. But everything that Bray Wyatt has done prior to that has been well executed, well thought out, and given the right tools to succeed. So I'm willing to take a chance to say that this could be good. And that doesn't excuse what they did at Hell in a Cell. But I'm willing to give a second chance to let WWE right the wrongs and have Bray Wyatt as the Fiend, as now the babyface in this feud, win the title at Crown Jewel. Which isn't the best place for him to win it, let's be honest, but it would be better than the alternative. And since I brought it up, I'll just talk about it here because it's in my notes later, that it was indeed announced that it would be Bray versus Seth Rollins once again for the Universal title, this time in a Falls Count Anywhere match. And so with the draft, we know that Bray Wyatt was drafted to SmackDown, and we know that Seth Rollins was drafted to Raw. So, for one, they're already going back on their word of not having cross-branded matches because they just scheduled one for the next pay-per-view. But that aside, there's directions they can go with this that Bray Wyatt would still win with. I think the most likely is that the blockbuster trade that they are teasing now, that Booker T talked about on this trade panel shenanigans, that there's a blockbuster trade that is set to be announced tomorrow during the debut episode of WWE Backstage on FS1, which totally makes sense. They're trying to get some buzz around that show. That's a good way to do it. So I envision that Bray Wyatt is going to be traded back to Raw. And that is how we get the title on him while still being on Raw. But there are other ways, too. Because another thing they could do, because Cain Velasquez is not assigned a brand. So they could have Bray Wyatt win, stay on SmackDown with the Universal title, and then have Cain Velasquez win the WWE title off of Brock Lesnar, and move Cain Velasquez to Raw with the WWE Championship. It gives both brands the title. It would put the big red belt on the big blue brand, so maybe they'd have to change that to like an all-blue title. I am not entirely sure. Other than that, I think that that's really the main things here, but another critique I have of this, and this is just going back to the Hell in a Cell thing, how terrible of a storyline is this? That it started with the Hell in a Cell match, which ended in a no contest / DQ, whatever you want to call it. So now their solution to that is, well, now we have to have a Falls Count Anywhere match. Like, that's so backwards. Like, the Hell in a Cell is supposed to be the be-all, end-all of a feud. I don't quite understand the reverse psychology in that. Patrick Smith in the chat says, what do you think? Does The Fiend win now? I think he does. I really think he does. As I just went over a second ago, I think that they're going to trade Bray Wyatt to Raw tomorrow on the WWE Backstage show that's debuting on FS1. I think they're going to trade Bray Wyatt there. I think he's going to win at Crown Jewel as the conquering babyface. Now, I thought he was going to win at Hell in a Cell too, so don't take my word for it. But if I had to put money on it right now, I would say that is what happens. But yeah, crazy ending. I mean, it was at the very least a cliffhanger ending, which I will always appreciate that they at least did something to try to get us invested in this one more time. So I appreciate the effort. There was definitely some hokey aspects of it, which if you want to nitpick, sure, you can definitely go there. But I didn't hate this. I'm optimistic about it, and I'm not going to shit on it before we get to the end of it. So I'm going to let this thing play out. I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to give it a chance to see where we go. And if the result of this again is to find some way out and beat the Fiend or have some sort of non-decisive finish again, then I can't even fathom the ineptitude of this company. I can't even fathom being that stupid. I can't imagine it. There is no way that they could beat this man twice. There is no way that they could have him in 2 title matches and not deliver on either. I just can't see it. I just cannot see it happening. I refuse to see it happening until it actually happens. So, hopefully it doesn't come to that. I really hope that they smartened up at this point. But that's all we'll talk about for Seth and Bray stuff. We'll get into the full Raw show, which, full disclosure, about halfway through this show, my laptop decided to go into business for itself and force a restart. So my notes for this show were erased. I had to go back and go through websites and get their recaps and through my own recollection, jot everything back down. So it is possible I may miss something. But this show started with Becky Lynch coming out to cut a promo. She was supposed to face Sasha Banks tonight, but Sasha is on the sideline injured. So she's going to end up facing someone, in her words, that she can never get rid of, in Charlotte. Charlotte comes out, tries to say that she just wants to be friends with Becky again. And as Becky is laughing at this, Charlotte punches her in the face. Excellent. Heel Charlotte, you were dearly missed. Now we can talk about the inconsistency of how Charlotte was a heel to babyface back to heel, but I'm just happy she's a heel again. Like, God, babyface Charlotte sucks. So, this was good. I liked what Charlotte did there with the promo and then the cheap shot. That was very nice. The match was good, but I've seen it, I feel like, 100 times. And they work well together. They work great together, I would even say. But I don't know what more there is to do. Like, the last woman standing match they did was phenomenal at that Evolution show. They had the WrestleMania match with Ronda Rousey. They've had plenty of matches in between there. It just feels like there's no built-up names other than the 4 horsewomen. And therefore, there's no one to really generate an interesting match with other than some variation of those 4 against each other. So I definitely think they need to do a better job of building someone else up so that they can put them in these sort of spots. And the finish of this match, I believe Charlotte hit a spear and Becky kicks out. And then Charlotte laughs at the fact that Becky kicked out, but she distracted herself with her laugh. And Becky rolled her up with a crucifix and wins the match. So, there you go. The only way Charlotte loses matches is when she gets rolled up. She must have been trained by Samoa Joe. After this, we got the first round selections for tonight, which featured Seth Rollins to Raw, Brock Lesnar to SmackDown, the 2 champions, Charlotte to SmackDown, or I have this completely backwards. Rollins to, I copy and pasted this too, so the website I copy and pasted this from screwed up, not me. Rollins to Raw, Lesnar to SmackDown, Charlotte to Raw, New Day to SmackDown, and then Andrade and Zelina Vega to Raw. So we are doomed for 1,000 more Charlotte versus Becky Lynch matches. I mean, there are worse fates, I suppose. But, yeah. And where Andrade goes, Zelina goes. And where Zelina goes, Aleister Black goes. And where Andrade goes, Charlotte goes. Or vice versa. So, for the rest of eternity, those four are going to be a package deal. What did you think of Raw tonight? I thought Raw was touch and go. I thought the first hour of it was pretty solid. The match quality was definitely fine, but it kind of fell off in the middle there. There was a lot of stuff I didn't really care about in the middle portions of the show and until the end. But we will go through all that segment by segment as we always do. Let's see, I have the second round picks written here next. So the Raw gets the Kabuki Warriors, SmackDown gets Daniel Bryan, Raw gets Rusev, SmackDown gets Bayley, and Raw gets Aleister Black. I'll try to do some sort of recap video for the draft at some point. Hopefully be up by tomorrow. We'll do like a whole roster review and all that sort of nonsense. But after this, we had the Viking Raiders versus Rudolph, the Random Tag Team, Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler, for the tag team titles, which was set up, of course, by the Viking Raiders beating them in a non-title match the week prior, which is the way we set up titles matches now. This was a really fun match. I thought this was possibly the best match on the show. There were a lot of good near falls for the heels. Dolph Ziggler and Roode did that cool zigzag spinebuster combo. There was Famousers. There was a glorious DDT. But some way or another, the Viking Raiders got out of all of it. And they eventually pinned Dolph Ziggler with the Viking Experience, or the Thor's Hammer, and eventually pick up the win. And this was the most over that the Viking Raiders have been since debuting on the main roster. Everyone was into the Raiders winning. So, perfect time to put the titles on them. They did great with that. I'm glad that this was the night they decided to do that when the crowd was hot for them. And afterward, they cut a promo with the titles, saying that they are the first undefeated team to hold the IWGP, ROH, NXT, and WWE Tag Team titles. Now, IWGP and New Japan and all those titles are sometimes mentioned on WWE. That's not new. Not normally do we get a Ring of Honor reference. So that was interesting. I guess the Viking Raiders are going with the conquerors of all companies. The expedition for gold, as the Broken Hardys did. This was very different from their normal Viking quote-unquote promos that they did back when they were still heels. I remember reviewing these shows, I would wait for those promos, and then I would just write down word for word what they said so I could read it back, and the ridiculousness of the verbiage and the everything that they used on those promos was ridiculous. But now, the Viking Raider baby faces are different. After that, we got our next slew of picks. Raw gets Cedric Alexander. SmackDown gets Shinsuke Nakamura. Raw gets Humberto Carrillo. SmackDown gets Ali. And Raw gets Rowan without Luke Harper. They did not draft Luke Harper and Eric Rowan as a unit. So what that means for Luke Harper going forward, he could be brushed to the side once again. Who knows? We got a squash match. Aleister Black defeats Eric Young with his new submission, which I have to say, I like it. I wasn't as high on it last week, just because of the logistics of it, that I feel like it would be easier to break a hold like that. But it definitely looks more unique, and it also, in theory, should give more leverage to Aleister Black with the way he applies that. So I'm for it. I like it. I think it's a cool-looking move, and I think it's good for him to have more than one finishing move, and a submission move I think works for him. And if they're able to get over that move and the Black Mass, then I think that's a good idea. I don't mind that at all. The next slew of picks, Raw gets Buddy Murphy, which, please, for the love of God, use Buddy Murphy, as he's been MIA the last several weeks. SmackDown takes Rude and Ziggler as a tag team. Raw takes Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal was drafted above Rey Mysterio, Baron Corbin, and The Miz. SmackDown takes Carmella, and Raw takes R-Truth, splitting the two up. How devastating. Now, the 24/7 title is still, anyone can win it. So, it could be won by a SmackDown guy at some point. They could put it back over there, then a pay-per-view or whatever. But splitting Truth and Mella, not sure how I feel about that. I mean, it's not like it's a devastating thing to do. But I did like their act together. We have another semi-squash match. Ricochet beating Shelton Benjamin. He actually wins with the recoil instead of the 630, though. And then after this is when we got the strange segment that was. The massage that Lana was receiving. Full of sexual innuendos. And then Bobby Lashley came in himself. Yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe some people enjoy this. Maybe some people get a kick out of it. I just find it gross, personally. I mean, it's just... I don't know, man. Like I get the idea of it, and hopefully the idea at the end of this is to get Rusev over as a babyface, conquering Lashley and getting the revenge. But other than that, like, this just doesn't hit for me. Not me personally. Tyson Fury and Braun Strowman are set to have a contract signing, hosted by Jerry Lawler. So they both come out, they both sign the contract and whatnot. Braun says he's not going to let Tyson use him to make himself a bigger star. Even says in Saudi Arabia he is going to beat him. He said Saudi Arabia rather than Crown Jewel. I wonder if he got yelled at for that. It's not Saudi Arabia. It is the global event known as Crown Jewel. Get it right. Tyson says he was at the SmackDown premiere because his kids wanted to see Braun, yada, yada, yada. Then says he will knock Braun out at the Crown Jewel, is what he says. And so the way they close this, Braun stands up. He beats the table in with his fist, and it caves in. Then Tyson Fury grabs a pen and snaps it in half. I say he snaps it in half. He tried to snap it in half, but then it didn't work. Unless he was just toying with us, and he was acting like he couldn't break it, and then broke it. But even if that was the case, that just made him look stupid. And that led to my all-time favorite commentary line in the history of ever. And this is quoting Dio Madden. "Did you see the state of that pen? That pen was completely and utterly demolished by Tyson Fury." I'm sorry, what now? I'm supposed to believe this guy is an ass kicker because he broke a pen in half? Really, a pen? A pen. He broke a pen in half. Gee. We get the next slew of picks. We have Raw getting Samoa Joe, getting him away from the draft table. SmackDown gets The Miz. Raw gets Akira Tozawa. SmackDown gets Baron Corbin, who finally comes off the board. And Raw gets Shelton Benjamin. And this would lead into the Buddy Murphy versus Cedric Alexander match. Cedric, who has been buried 6 feet under the past few weeks, or really month or 2 months period. And Buddy Murphy, who hasn't been used at all during that time. This was a great match in the Super Showdown that they did in Australia when Buddy Murphy won the Cruiserweight title. That was a phenomenal match between these two. And I was excited to see them in the ring again against each other. And this was a fun match. It was nowhere near the level that they pulled out in that pay-per-view show. But it was a fun match, and Murphy gets the clean win with the Murphy's Law. Murphy was back to being a heel, which I definitely thought he was on the road to being a babyface during the Roman Reigns storyline, but being that he was just dropped out of it, there are not much to say. Hate to see Cedric lose, but to me, Murphy has more upside at this point, being the new face on Raw and not being beaten into the ground like Cedric Alexander has been. So, I like that Murphy wins. It's a shame that we did nothing to capitalize with Murphy on SmackDown after having that great match with Roman Reigns and then beating Daniel Bryan, which I think might have been the last time he was on SmackDown at all, was the match that he beat Daniel Bryan in. So it's crazy to think about it in those terms, but it's at least good to see Buddy on TV this time and getting a win. I think that he has massive potential, and they could really do a lot with him. And after that was when we got the Fiend versus Rollins announcement, which I already talked about. Raw gets Rey Mysterio, finally. SmackDown gets quote-unquote Shorty Gable. Raw gets Titus O'Neil. SmackDown gets Elias, and Raw gets Liv Morgan, who is the last pick of the draft. She's been teasing a character change, and maybe the distinct honor of being the last pick in the draft could do something. Miss Irrelevant she is now. So maybe they can do something with that. And after that, we got the Kabuki Warriors versus Natalya and a mystery opponent. Or, I'm sorry, a mystery partner. And so, who should she choose? None other than Lacey fucking Evans. After they just had 5 matches against each other, including a last woman standing match 1 week ago, where Natty powerbombed her, or Lacey, I don't even remember. I think Natty won, right? Yeah, with the powerbomb off the stage. I don't even remember. It might have been Lacey that won. I don't remember. Which tells you how inconsequential this feud was. And what really tells you that is that they were teaming the next week. So, Lacey Evans and Natalya team against Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane. This match went on forever. And I could not care at all about it. I wasn't really given much reason to. I didn't care at all for Lacey teaming with Natalya after what they did the previous weeks. But yeah, Asuka is going to win with a roll-up after Lacey knocks out Kairi Sane with a woman's right. And yeah, I mean, that's the last thing that we're going to talk about here. So that's unfortunate timing, I guess. But yeah, overall, I didn't think Raw was terrible. I thought there was good stuff mixed in between there. But there was definitely a lot of stuff like that. Lacey and Natty stuff made no sense. Also, I did realize one thing I don't have in my notes from the recaps I got was the Street Profits and OC segment, where the Street Profits were doing their whole thing backstage. The OC come in, and the OC beats them up. Then later in the night, the Street Profits had a segment that they said they were going to get a partner and have a 6-man tag against the OC. But then that match never happened. So I don't know if that got bumped, if that was ever the plan, or what the deal was with that. But I'm guessing we'll probably see that next week. So that'll be the first time we see the Street Profits actually wrestle on Raw, which will be awesome, because the Street Marks that they've been doing for the past several weeks, where they just recap everything and talk about how great Raw is and yada yada yada. I'm looking forward more to seeing some Montez Ford frog splashes than I am hearing "We Want the Smoke." Don't tell me you want the smoke. Show me you want the smoke, man. Anyway, man, that's going to do it for today. Appreciate the few people that are in here live and those watching on the playback. We'll see with the Seth Rollins stuff going forward. I'm interested in it. Hopefully it was a double turn and not some crazy, stupid booking going on here. I'm holding on to a thread that WWE knows what they're doing. It's a very dangerous thing to lean on, but thank you, everyone. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, do all that YouTube stuff, comment, and we'll be back. The next video will probably be a draft recap. We'll go over the rosters and do all that, hopefully some point tomorrow. And after that, we'll be back for the Wednesday Night Wars show as well, and then SmackDown on Friday, and we'll keep rolling things forward. Have a good night, guys.